Welcome to A Better Divorce podcast, where we have conversations about the emotional, financial, and legal issues that are on your mind or should be on your radar if your goal is to keep your divorce out of court. I'm collaborative divorce attorney and mediator Andrea Vacca, and I know that how you divorce matters to your long-term well-being. That's why it's my mission to help you have a better divorce with as little acrimony as possible, so that you can create the best life possible on the other side of your marriage. Hello, I'm Andrea Vacca, the host of A Better Divorce podcast, and I'm so happy to have Wendy Behary on the show today. Wendy is the author of the highly regarded book, Disarming the Narcissist, Surviving and Thriving with the Self-Absorbed. And it's now in its third edition, as I believe. It's third edition, right, Wendy?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So welcome to the A Better Divorce podcast. I've recommended your book to so many people over the years since I have the first edition, I think. Oh, no, I have the second edition. And I'm just excited to be able to talk to you on the podcast and discuss navigating divorce with a narcissistic partner. So the big topic. Yeah, welcome here.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's so nice to be with you, Andrea.
So, as you know, the word narcissist gets tossed around a lot. Everyone thinks they're married to one or divorcing one. And but not everybody can be diagnosed, have narcissistic personality disorder. So I wanted to get clear when we're talking about narcissists today, what exactly are we talking about? Who are we talking about? Can you just define that for us before we get started?
Really important question, because you're right. The word gets tossed around very frequently, far too much, I would say. Let's think about narcissism as something that happens along a spectrum, right? Classic narcissistic personality disorder, the diagnostic label, if you will, is describing someone who is highly grandiose, someone who is low in remorse and empathy, someone is highly approval seeking. If you think about it along a spectrum, it's levels of intensity in traits like arrogance and control and devaluing, dismissiveness, low empathy, a high sense of entitlement. In the case of a more covert type of narcissist, you have someone who is what I call the super sufferer or the virtuous victim. So their extraordinary identity really comes from being the victim who doesn't get enough recognition or reassurance. And I'm sure you've dealt with this with plenty of people you've advocated for who have partners like this on the other side.
I never realized that having that victim mentality and that approach to life really is a sign of covert narcissism. So it's really good to know. And I appreciate that it's about the level of intensity of these traits. And there are 12, 13 traits or something? Yeah. And so if you hit is it 10 of them or 10 out of 12? Like if someone were to read your book and saw the traits, how many are there that need to register to become defined as
become a bona fide narcissist? I think if you're hitting 10 of them, you're probably there. But lots of people can have some traits of narcissism. They're not necessarily so deleterious to others. They're not necessarily so damaging, but they can be annoying. They can be aloof. They can be obnoxious. So again, it depends on that spectrum.
Yeah. So whether you have 5 of the traits or 10 of the traits, you can imagine why it would be difficult to divorce somebody or very challenging to go through this process of ending a marriage and all the emotional issues that brings up in the healthiest of people. And if you're, dealing with somebody who is overly sensitive and is trying to protect themselves, in this way, it could be very hard. So what should somebody who is considering divorcing somebody who is a narcissist or is in the process of doing that, what should they expect? What will they see? What are some common experiences?
Yeah, this is a really tough one, because narcissism is so complicated, and because despite this overarching master of the universe, boastful, bragging, seemingly super confident individual, you're often dealing with someone who has a high degree of insecurity underneath, meaning a lot of shame, inadequacy, a sense of defectiveness, we would call it in therapy I practice, and they don't know it. They've spent their lifetime sort of living behind these masks or these modes, these ways of coping. and they become rather natural to them. So when you're divorcing someone like this, you know that you need to know that there's a high probability that you will be dealing with someone who could become vengeful, retaliatory, who's feeling that fear and that sense of shame and failure at what the audience is going to see to them, is how they're going to read them in the face of a failed marriage. Even if they've initiated it, the narcissist themselves, it doesn't matter. And so there's a, I have to be the good guy, therefore you're the bad guy, because again, they see most things in black and white. Who's right, who's wrong, who's best, who's worst, who's good, who's bad.
Right. Right. So realizing that they're going to make you the bad guy, and we see that often,
Mm,
that this is that they want to be seen as the good guy. So how to play into that? I think we'll talk more about that. How to help build that up in some way so that you can get what you want from them, but also realize, I guess, not to take it personally that they're going to be doing the same thing they did during your marriage, which is trying to push you down and not acknowledge you and not care about your feelings. Like this is not going to be any different than the marriage that you're leaving.
right. Right. Yeah. And also recognize that they can appear very charming when they are in front of attorneys. And I mean, they can't necessarily hold that line very long if they're not getting exactly what they want, but they will certainly try to appeal to win favor. And partners of narcissists have been, in many cases, it's years of being so highly offended and devalued and dismissed, manipulated, and betrayed in the worst case scenarios. So it's tough to do what I often propose without some really good planning and some self-help work or some professional help to sturdy yourself, to learn everything you can about this complicated personality so that your words and your whole style and demeanor and the way you present yourself is informed by this knowledge, this important wisdom, if you will, so that you can be a steady, sturdy advocate for yourself alongside your attorney or mediator that is supporting you. And I urge mediators and attorneys to also, as you know, Andrea, the importance of the due diligence around understanding this narcissism.
Right. It's very common for clients to say first off the bat, I don't know if you'll be able to, you know, work with my spouse or his attorney because they're very charming. Usually it's women saying that their husbands are very charming and they will fool everybody.
Mhm.
And and we're prepared, we know that that's how they'll come in. And but like you said, they can't sustain it for very long, especially when push comes to shove, like their real self comes through. So we
Yeah.
always have to let our potential clients or, new clients know that. So let's talk about particular points of conflict that come up around divorce and how you can best you know, navigate these issues. So I know you have a online community for co-parenting with the narcissist, which
Mhm.
I just sent that link to a client yesterday. So you might be hearing
Thank
from
you.
her. Yes. um, so let's talk about custody and parenting. Like, what tips can you offer when somebody is negotiating a parenting agreement with somebody who is diagnosed or has narcissistic traits? So
Yeah.
how to negotiate them and how to implement those agreements that you may reach. So it's, the during the process and maybe after. I know that's a big
Mhm.
topic, but any tips um, that you have at this moment for that?
Yeah, there's 3 big ones that I'd like to share, and the reason I'm gonna share these is, first, we have to really, again, understand, so I know this I have to be brief around this topic because we could talk for days and days about it, but the one differentiating factor when you're divorcing a narcissist versus someone else is they do feel highly justified to have what they want. They feel entitled, so remember the word entitled, big word in this particular group. The more you know, the better your chances of being able to use these tips, which is transparent intention, be very clear about your intention, what it is, what it isn't, which includes an empathic understanding of this high sensitivity that the narcissist has and high degree of suspiciousness around everyone's motives. Everyone's out to get me here, and I'll show you. Everything's a game, everything's a competition with them, and they have to win. So knowing that, along with the third tip, which is the harder one to swallow, which is what I call sometimes the when all else fails strategy, can be helpful to both the partner as well as even to lawyers who are representing partners on this. So it goes something like this. You know, the narcissist is very sensitive. So you might say, this is not meant as a criticism. In fact, bringing in strategy 3, you probably already thought about this yourself. You're a smart guy, and I know how much you love the kids, and I know you're going to do well by us. So my intention is by no means to try to control this or take the kids away from you. I want them to have a relationship with you. They need you. But I think we both know, and again, you've probably already considered this, that, given your crazy schedule and your high demands at work, that it's probably best that they stay in their rooms. They stay comfy where they are right now, and you'll have as much time with them as, you can possibly manage. Now, the reason I suggest this, Andrea, is because we know that, well, we experts who work with these types know that, and you know this too, probably seeing it over the long haul, that sadly, narcissists will dwindle their time. They will do a lot of disappearing acts. They will show up when it's convenient and when it looks good to be a good dad. I'm saying men. It can be women too, but I work mostly with narcissistic men. So like toddlers, their attention span is really short, but they will fight if they feel like there's a fight on. So
Yes.
sometimes paradoxically, you have to sort of move into it as opposed to fighting against them.
Got it. Right. Let them make the decision and make it their, look like that we're doing what they want,
Right.
to have it make more flexibility or, work around your schedule or something like that.
Yes.
It's hard. It's really hard for these parents, especially moms who are concerned about the kids being with their dad more because they're not getting the attention that they need because they're narcissistic, parent. They're very difficult and damaging to live with.
Yes.
So, any tips on how to make sure the kids are okay, you know, and any signs to look for when they're coming back? And I don't know, anything you can offer there?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, kids need, according to research and according to what we've experienced in treatment rooms, kids need one healthy parent. Now, that's a big ask for the partner of a narcissist or ex-partner of a narcissist who already has to be a parent. That's a big job already, but now has the added burden of being the repair expert, the one who's going to fix all the ruptures that are happening when the child or children are with the narcissist. But that's the job, right? That's part of what can spare your children, the long-term scar tissue of this. I mean, listen, they'll have some, nothing's perfect. Parenting's hard. All kinds of scenarios can occur in the context of a child's development, but your kids can stand a chance of being healthy, well-adjusted humans. It is going to take a toll. I mean, I know this. I have so many people in my online community, both the co-parenting community and my other loving, living, leaving the narcissist in your life community, who are saying, gosh, help us. Our kids, he doesn't believe in seatbelts. He doesn't believe that drinking and driving is a problem. He leaves the kids, on screens all day long while he's on pornography upstairs in the other room. It's so, lots of really reasonable concerns and worries. And again, the healthiest, taking good care of yourself and being the healthiest parent you can be, not perfect, is going to be, really your best tool. I mean, if it's dangerous, obviously, your lawyer has to help you to get this into the courts for
Right.
reconciliation if it's dangerous. But, and I know that there's little they pay that much attention to.
Right. We have found that there are certain processes that would work better with narcissists. That mediation, no, it's not going to work. You probably don't. You can't advocate for yourself in mediation. But using the collaborative model and bringing this team approach and having a mental health professional on the team and a separate financial professional, so that the smartest guy in the room is not controlling everything, meaning that, narcissistic spouse, it's usually a man, but it could be a woman, as you said.
Mhm.
Um, but litigation, they don't like to be told what to do, and they don't always follow the rules. But if they make the decision in the collaborative process, they're deciding what this agreement looks like, and there's a better chance they're going to do what they say they're going to do because they signed off on it. So
Mhm.
it's hard, but there are ways to negotiate with them. So
I think
what?
that's the ideal setup. I mean, I love that setup, and mediation only works when you're talking about someone who's very low on the narcissism spectrum and perhaps a more, easily intimidated, anxious type of narcissistic human, and they're out there, and it might work, but you have to have a super skillful mediator who's still doing probably more of that, shuttle diplomacy in separate rooms and going back and forth and also consulting the attorneys throughout this process.
Right. You would need attorneys in
Yeah,
the process.
yeah.
So what about when we're talking about negotiating around money and assets and finances?
Mhm.
I know you have something called the vomit bucket technique. Can you say more about that? And
Yeah. Yeah, it's I the friendlier version is what I called it, the when all else fails strategy, but in my book, I refer to it too as the vomit bucket technique because it makes you wanna gag. I mean, it is a bit nauseating to know that you are trying to get someone to do the right thing by having to appeal to their ego, to help create that swell in their ego, which is so badly needed. Narcissists love to be superheroes. So if you give them a solution in a way that they can succeed at, putting on the super cape, they are often happy to do so. So is it a bit manipulative? Yes, but it's not harmful. I mean, you're really only trying to get them to do the right thing, like what they would do if they were in a healthier frame of mind.
right.
And that goes something like I was saying before, even with the children, it can apply to money. Like, I know you're going to take care of me in the end. You always do the right thing. You've always been thoughtful and generous, right? But I know you'll do the right thing in the end and not leave me stranded. That's not your style to do that. And I know you wouldn't, want anyone to see it in any other way than that, which is just a tiny hint at I'm going to expose you.
Yeah.
Right? So in all kinds of subtle, non-threatening, giving you all the benefit of the doubt that you really haven't earned, although there may be little kernels of truth in there. So if you can find kernels of truth and just embellish them, that certainly is going to go a longer way. I have watched this work right before my eyes. I have used this myself with narcissistic clients in the room just simply because I know that under other conditions, they would do it very differently.
Mhm.
They would make better choices, but they are so held hostage by this need to protect their ego that they do harm.
Right. So play into that ego, build them up. It would be very helpful if there is a kernel of truth in there. Otherwise,
Yes.
I don't know if I could do it. It would be very hard. But there must be something. You were married to this person. You agreed to marry this person. Must have been something. They must have done some wonderful things along the way. So let's play on that. Let's use that.
Keep your eye on the prize, that's what I say. Keep your eye on the mission here. Your mission is it's not about making them feel good. That's not the mission. Your mission is to take care of you, be your own best advocate. And if that means it doesn't mean throwing yourself under the bus or selling your soul to the devil. You are simply trying to appeal to this ego that gets them to take care of you. And that's like the least they could do if you're divorcing them. You're coming out of this marriage and trying to move on to your life.
And remember, as people are separating and now living apart and getting space, they can see it in a different light. There's space between them, right? And so the partner can see them and they can become much more critical than maybe they were during the marriage. But I know you talk about how, narcissists do not want to be, they're very sensitive to criticism, I think, as you mentioned, and they don't want to be controlled. So, you know, just not making sure that you stay away from those impulses, to
Impulse
try
is
and
a
control.
good word. That's a really good word because they are also highly impulsive. And I think that as hard as it is to imagine, once they feel like they are off the hook, they're not the bad guy in this whole scenario of ending the marriage, even though they've betrayed you, even though they've offended you in countless ways. But they're not the bad guy. You're sort of giving them the message that they're off the hook, and sometimes that can come with a question, like, "What would you propose?" You ask the narcissist, "Well, what would you propose? I'm interested in your thoughts about how we proceed and what you think might be fair." Because, I think at the end of the day, justice is so important to you. It is, by the way.
It is.
Narcissists are all about justice, of course, under their terms. But, I know it's all about justice and fairness. So what would you propose would seem fair by your standards for me in all of this? Again, it's like you're calling the shots. You're sort of doesn't mean it's going to end this way. If it goes bad and it doesn't work and you go back to your lawyer and you'll figure out a way and you'll have to fight. But if you can avoid that, it might be for the best.
Yeah, yeah, do what you can to come to an agreement with your partner, whether they have narcissism or not. Uh, and having it be their idea, and having it be, make it look like it's what they want, and hopefully it is what they want,
Yeah.
and you can live with it.
Yeah.
What a Some things I've seen, and I don't know if this is very common, is that some uh, people who are narcissists don't want the divorce. They've been abusive. They haven't maybe cheated. There haven't been betrayal. It's just been they're angry. They're always the victim. They made everyone's life miserable, but they don't want a divorce. They don't see any reason for it. Nothing was that bad. Like they'll never acknowledge that the
Mhm.
relationship was bad. And it's very hard to divorce someone who doesn't want to be divorced and feels entitled to not be divorced. Um, is this very common that you see? Yes, yes, it is.
Oh, yeah, because you just hit like another target in terms of their makeup. Again, as therapists, we're always trying to look at the underbelly here, what's in their underworld. And in that underworld, you have a very, very lonely child. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, we wouldn't have time to get into the whole psychological profile, but there's a lot of loneliness. Narcissists don't usually end relationships unless they've already lined somebody up to replace their partner, or they tend to have an entourage, a lot of fans and followers in their midst. But they're lonely people. They don't have good close friends, confidants. They don't they're not very skillful in the world of emotional closeness and intimacy. And so they don't want divorce. And they will protest. Not that bad. What's the big deal? You're so sensitive. You make a big deal out of everything. What do you want from me? You don't appreciate anything. I give you everything. You get that
Yes,
instead. They minimize the damage.
right. Okay, so it's coming from their sense of fear of being alone, feeling inadequate.
Failing.
If they lose this partner, they've failed in their marriage, and they'll be, yeah, with nothing.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's challenging, and I think we're seeing more of it. And I don't know if I'm just recognizing it more, or is it becoming more? Is this personality disorder growing in among us, or is it just that we recognize it more?
I think it's 2 things. I think because generationally, there's been a lot more well, first of all, there's been a lot more awareness, and so what emerges is just this awareness of what it is. It's like discovering, okay, all these symptoms that have been around, now we have a name for it. Of course, again, it is overused and overkilled, I think, and there's a lot of mythology on the internet, but I do think there is a kind of growth spurt to it as well. And some of that is the generational legacy of, monkey see, monkey do. And a lot of, media gratification, a lot of indulgence, a lot of low frustration tolerance, given all of the immediate satisfaction we can get at our fingertips. So that can also, contribute to this problem.
So we're creating little narcissists too, like from our just society and the way the world is. So it is more common. So I know in your book you talk about mindfulness and self-awareness as a tool to
Yeah.
helping disarm the narcissist, but how to work instead of like disarming them, like how to help yourself
Yeah.
when you have to interact with a narcissist. So can you say more about that?
I think you will only be effective when you are confronting a narcissist, whether it's to hold them accountable, to set a limit, just to get them to hear you or pay attention. You're only going to be effective at doing that if you're showing up like this, in this tone, at this level, and using, again, this it's a really beautiful strategy called empathic confrontation. And that doesn't mean compassion. You're not feeling sorry for the narcissist who's, causing all this havoc and wounding you in many ways. You're understanding. Empathy is understanding. So you're understanding who they are and you're showing up in your healthy adult stance. So if I'm showing up, I mean, I learned this by making 1,000 mistakes when I was treating them years ago. I was find myself sitting in the treatment room just apologizing, giving in, you know, tolerating their abuse, and then realizing, well, the person in the room isn't my healthy best self. This is not me, the expert, or me, even just the adult woman. This is me, probably like a 5-year-old. I've just gotten triggered, and now I'm doing all I can to try to survive the moment. That feels scary. So we do need to arm ourselves in our healthy adult modes. Make sure
Mm,
it's not your little self who's likely to show up, get very triggered and overwhelmed, and then you'll resort to those coping styles that you've used far too long that don't work. They just don't work with this personality type. You need to be able to feel your strength, feel your spine, put your chin up, put your shoulders back, and recognize you don't have to be angry because anger is exhausting, and anger goes nowhere with narcissists. So you don't have to be angry, you just need to be resolute. Like,
right.
I know you didn't mean to be hurtful. I know that may not have been your intention, but I gotta tell you, like, ow, that hurts, and that's not okay.
Right.
Doing this dance anymore, okay? Just not doing it. So I'm gonna take a little break. We can try to talk about this again later,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
It's like, I'm protecting me. I'm gonna tell my truth. I'm gonna reclaim my voice. I'm not gonna be silent anymore, but I don't have to be yelling. I don't have to be angry because that's not a good representation of your message, right? And of your worth, of your value.
You know, you can't keep doing the same thing over and
Yeah,
over and expecting a different result. So understanding your own power. As you're talking, I'm thinking about that power stance where you're probably not going to do it when literally in front of somebody. But just think of yourself with your hands on your hips and your legs apart and your back straight and like get your power
yeah.
and be the adult in the room again and set the boundaries and then have the conversation or say yes or no, whatever it has to be.
And know that it's not going to land well necessarily with a narcissist, but that's not the point. The point is, it won't land well because you've touched them,
Mm,
right? Otherwise, they wouldn't need to continue to show up in these narcissistic modes. You've touched them, they're not gonna give you the benefit of knowing that, but what you always know is, "I did a good job for me. Look at
you're not.
me. Look what I did. Look what I said."
They
I
didn't drag you back down that rabbit hole and into that cycle and leave you as a puddle on the floor as you have been all the time, every other time, right? So you
Exactly,
can go on and do what you need to do.
exactly. Yep.
Much, much better situation. Well, I know we could talk about this for 3 days, as you said. But we only have 30 minutes, not 3 days. So, what I'd like to know is what of all the tips that you can provide, Wendy, what would you say your one better divorce tip is?
Learn what you can. Understand this as well as you can for yourself so that you can be best equipped to create a presentation, create a space not only to keep yourself healthy and well, but create a voice that can best represent your truth, your value, what matters to you. Change the dance.
Change the dance, and you need to be educated about what is happening to cause the narcissism,
Yeah.
what they're experiencing, how to empathize but not be controlled by it, how to stand in your own power. There's so much you can learn if you
Yes.
become educated about that. And
Yes.
Well, I hope, I know you have a lot of resources on your website. So what is the website where people can find more about you and everything you can offer?
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of goodies on my website. It's called disarmingthenarcissist.com. So you can type my name or type disarmingthenarcissist.com and you'll go to my website.
Yeah, and they can buy your book there, Amazon, everywhere. Is it the third edition? Was I correct? It's now the third
The
edition?
third edition, which has a new chapter on co-parenting with a narcissist.
Oh, wonderful. I'm going to get that edition. I will pick that up. Well, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Andrea. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah. So to find out more about Vacca Family Law Group, you can find us and how to have a better divorce at vaccalaw.com. And this has been another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast. We will catch you on the next episode. You've been tuning in to another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast with Andrea Vacca. Thank you for subscribing, leaving your positive comments and reviews, and sharing the show with others. You can watch episodes at vaccalaw.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Bye for now, and remember, you can have a better divorce.